school. And I also chair the Racing Together subcommittee. Like Juliet, I've had over 30 years in the racing industry. Probably my 7 years at Aintree Racecourse running the Grand National was a real highlight when we also started the Aintree Community Programme whilst I was there.
Tom?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Tom Baker. I'm the Head of Social Impact at the British Horse Racing Authority. Previously held similar roles at the Jockey Club as well as in Olympic and Paralympic sport.
And finally, Daniel.
Thanks, Luke. Daniel O'Sullivan. I'm Head of Programme Delivery at the BHA. I guess I'm here today to talk about Beacon. I've been leading that work, which is a sort of big consumer insights piece that we've been doing, and I guess the power of community that has in terms of building emotional connections.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Daniel, because our first question to the room really is, what do we mean by the power of community in racing? If you wanted to start, Daniel.
Yeah, I think, I was at the RCA Showcase Awards last week, and you can really see the power of community and what race courses can do for their local communities, the different initiatives that they can have to draw people in, which I guess we've seen is key from Beacon.
Okay, John, yourself?
Yeah, no, I think for me, in terms of our racing and racing's future, our community and our local communities, whether we're at a race course, training yard, whatever it may be, community actually is our lifeblood. And if we're not active in our communities, if we don't work within our communities, then our sport will die eventually. It really is that important. So the power of that community for me is really the lifeblood of the sport for the future.
Tom?
Yeah, I guess building on John's response there, I think in its simplest terms, for me, power of community is the language we're using in the social impact strategy around community engagement, very much an acknowledgement of the importance of British racing's reputation in local communities, acknowledging we are part of every community in which we have a physical presence, and I guess an appreciation that there's a lot of experience and expertise across the sport in this area, but there's a real importance to ensure that we are an asset in every community in which we exist, and that is very much the case in some, not the case in others, and that's very much kind of where we're looking to drive things.
And Julia?
Yeah, totally agree, Tom. And my community, my direct community, is the equine insurance community. And we thrive on our driven by the equine industry community. And I think communication and collaboration and a united passion for all of our interests in racing help drive us together.
Excellent. Thank you all. Moving on slightly, what do we think makes racing as an industry particularly well placed to make a real difference in local communities? Starting with yourself, Julia.
So to me, I mean, the racing, it's so niche and so specialist, and everybody knows everybody, and everybody lives relatively close together, and everybody takes their horses and their owners, and everybody goes to the same places. So, to me, it's the fact that everybody is employed in one place and knows everybody, and it gives us the best opportunity, to make a real difference through that collaborative passion, like I said in the first answer.
And Tom?
Yeah, I think building on that, there's something about the physical connection that we have with communities, and I guess that's twofold. That is both in the enduring presence we have in communities, and some racecourses very much being at the heart of their communities, but also the opportunity that racing provides to bring people together, and that's both through race days and other events and activities as well. But I think that's really at the heart of it.
And John, yourself?
Yeah, I agree with Tom in terms of geography, but we obviously have people in rural locations we need to bring in. But yeah, from my example, whether it's Newton Abbot currently, whether it's Aintree in the past, yeah, you're physically seen as being part of your community. Here at Newton Abbot, we're right in the town centre, for example. So you very much have to be just deliberately part of that whole community, which means proactive. The thing though that we've probably got is the horse itself. You know, we've got an incredible animal there that people are in awe of, people want to learn more about. We can give people the opportunity to get close to horses, and we can bring people and give people experiences and draw people in an experience based on something they may never get the chance or may never have had the chance to do before, which is get close to these extraordinary animals. And they are very much, whenever you do that, and when you take a horse into a community, whether you bring a community to a horse, the impact that has is really quite extraordinary. And I think the sport still has an awful lot of work that it can do and should be doing to bring that to life more. From an own perspective and being physical and part of it, that's okay, and being proactive and being part of the business community, all that sort of thing is great. But once you bring a horse into that equation, whether you're taking them out or just bringing people in to see them, I think it's quite extraordinary the impact that can have.
I think you raised a really good point there, because I'm 22 years of age myself, and the first time I was ever really up close and personal with a horse was this year on the Racing Media Academy. So there might be earlier stages for that to happen potentially.
Yeah, we're very fortunate, again, talking from a racing to school perspective. We're very lucky that we get to see some of the feedback from some of the young people who get to go on our racing to school days. And, you know, I was looking at it before, you get comments like, I really enjoyed it. It gave me a new opportunity in life. And it's those sort of things that make such a real difference. And as you say, Lucas, sort of your first experience getting close to horse and the impact it's made on you, you know, to be able to do that and impact on people's lives and how they view life and give people opportunities is huge.
Dan, I know a project that you've been working on for some time is Project Beacon. Could you please just summarise it for us?
Yeah, I think in one word, I'd summarise Project Beacon about opportunity. I mean, this has been British racing's most in-depth piece of research to date. It's identified that we have an addressable market of over 25 million in the UK and Ireland, which is about 44% of the population. And I guess within that, the real opportunity comes is that sort of 8.5 million of those are people who don't currently engage with racing. And that if we were to do certain things in terms of their perceptions of racing, reaching them in through the right channels and provide them with what they're looking for, they would engage in racing. And sort of half of those people are under 40. So again, you know, I guess the future of racing. We did segment the 25.5 million into a number of 8 segments. And we've sort of got 2 growth segments that we describe as open-minded rookies and social stakers. And I think we've identified 6 sort of, we could call them strategic pillars or jobs to be done around it. So we need to address welfare concerns. We need to build those emotional connections, which communities can do. We need, for our sort of casual fans and our people new to the sport, create a narrative around our sort of top level. We need to sort of demystify the sport, because sometimes it's not seen as accessible for people. Evolve the race day experience. And I guess one thing of the research is there's an openness to sort of get involved in micro ownership and shared ownership, which we didn't expect to see, but it was a lot higher than we thought. So I think, you know, we know our market, and we've identified, you know, what we need to do to sort of get those people in.
And what are the next steps from those learnings?
So the next steps now, we're sort of organising ourselves as an industry to sort of deliver on those. We're putting together sort of a programme office so that we have a sort of clear plan to delivering against it. It's informing what GBR's activity is for 2026. So they're focused really on 3 of those jobs to be done: address welfare concerns, building the emotional connection, and demystifying the sport. And then I guess we're working now in partnership and collaboration with other stakeholders. So we're doing a lot of work in the last month or 2 in terms of sharing those insights with racecourses around how they can evolve the race day experience. Working with our broadcasters on how they tell racing stories, which again are key to emotional connection, and also working with, you know, the ownership and in terms of how we can grow that. There are some sort of bigger solutions that we need to do. So we need to sort of work on those barriers, which were horse welfare. You know, we need to sort of tell the messages around how well our horses are cared for. I mean, that's really one of the key messages, what people wanted to see. So really, you know, building on it, having a clear plan to what we need to do, identifying some bigger projects, and then it will require investment and resources to deliver on those.
Yeah, some great points there, Dan, especially like the storytelling element of racing. I mean, I was fortunate enough to spend all 5 days at Goodwood this year, and I can tell you that the most packed the parade ring was for the Magnolia Cup, which really brings so many stories from all those participated in it. Juliet, what does it mean for Markel to be involved in such a wonderful event?
It means a hell of a lot, doesn't it? Just to sort of go back a stage in terms of our story and our relationship with Goodwood and how we got involved with the Magnolia Cup. We started working with Goodwood in the late sort of 2000s. And that was particularly from my own perspective on the insurance side. We sponsored a little race and we had some fun. And I always love giving back to the industry that feeds me. But the Magnolia Cup and our relationship with Goodwood sort of expanded. Funny enough, in 2019, just before Khadija won the race, and we struck a deal with Goodwood to take that race on. And for us as a company, you know, D&I is incredibly important. Support of women is incredibly important. And you look what this race has done over the last sort of 7 years. I think Khadija's win sent it sort of stratospheric in terms of, you know, how it is seen on the charity race scale now. And even people that have not been racing, you know, have heard of Khadija Mello, which is quite incredible. And for us to be supporting an event like this, and over the last 7 years, I think it's raised more than £3.5 million for women's charities. And I love the fact Goodwood chooses a separate charity every year. This year it was the King's Trust. And incredibly, we raised £834,000. We've just had an event actually at work to hand the cheque over to them. So I think we are incredibly lucky that, or foresightful, that we saw what an incredible event this was. And we remain so delighted to continue to support that. And you look at the journeys of the individual riders, and to get into this race, I mean, the applications are enormous. And then that gets filtered down through a ridiculous fitness program. Apparently you have to be able to plank for 4 minutes. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, I just, you know, everybody said to me 4 or 5 years ago, you should do this. I mean, I couldn't plank for 4 minutes. So I think the sort of the tenacity and the resilience of these women coming forward, a lot who've never sat on a horse before, you know, much like Khadija. And, you know, her academy now is able to put forward 1 rider per year for the race. And I think that the reach of it has just, you know, been utterly extraordinary. Markel's been incredibly generous, matching the contributions as well. And I think that's been a great story. And it just mirrors the style of our company and sort of empowerment of people. So it's a lovely story to have been involved with. And the community getting together to help the individual riders, you know, from the trainer, from the owner's generosity, from the jockey coaches to the British Racing School to the IJF. There is so much collaboration and great example of community coming together to make that happen.
Thank you very much, Julia. I am keen to get everyone as much time as possible on this, but that was amazing. Thank you very much. Tom, I'm going to move on to you. Talk us through the BHA social impact strategy and its timeline so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, I mean, this piece of work builds on, you know, work in this area that's been going on for over a decade. The creation of Racing Together about 10 years ago being a key moment in that. I think then in 2023, it was the Industry Programme Group, which is a group that oversees the sports work in the areas of social impact, sustainability, horse welfare and people strategy. Felt that ultimately we weren't fulfilling the potential that we've got in using all of the great work that we do across the industry to help build the sport's reputation and relevance with key audiences, both from a kind of consumer and political point of view. I think there was also a sense from those funding a lot of the work that they wanted to see greater collaboration in the sport, which is kind of common theme, less duplication and more of a quantifiable impact of what we were delivering. So the strategy has been put together in the past year or so with lots of different stakeholders kind of feeding into it, and is a response, I guess, to that opportunity that was outlined, and is very much an evolution of the work that has gone on in this space to date. As a piece of work itself, it outlines several shifts that we want to kind of embed, the changes that we want to kind of see across the landscape, across social impact and community engagement activity. There are 4 goals within it that really outline where racing can and should be focused in its efforts, knowing that we can't be all things to all people and try and have an impact in every single way, because we're just not resourced to do so. And then I think kind of more practically, there are 3 priorities within the strategy as well. That is very much where central resource will be focused to try and kind of move things forward. First of those is to establish the young people pathway. So very much kind of linking in with some of what kind of John's talked about with reference to racing to school, and Dan's talked about from a kind of insights from Beacon point of view, and in trying to ensure that all of the great work we do with young people works better together and connects, and ultimately helps the sport have more of an impact on young people. The second priority then is to build the foundation of our impact story, and really make sure that we are clear on the impact that we are having, and can therefore better celebrate the impact that we're having. And then lastly, it's very much kind of a focus on stakeholders and funders, and making sure everyone's clear on the roles that they are and can play moving forwards, and the opportunities that exist for them as part of this work as well.
So you mentioned the stakeholders there. If they were tuned in to, if you are tuned into this webinar, how would they be able to connect with the strategy?
Yeah, well, I mean, a starting point would be to read it and digest it and take it all in, I think. And I'm sure Lucy will circulate a link to it after the webinar. And I think then it's really a case of reflecting on what it says. We've not gone through the process of developing a strategy with the intention that everything stays the same. So, it's very much, there are central initiatives that have been kind of outlined and are underway that will hopefully move things forward. But I think there's a lot of work that everyone is doing that can help drive those changes as well. And then I'd really encourage people to get in touch. It's been the conversations that I've had and have in the diary with various different charities, various different race courses, that have really helped to move things forward, both in I guess the understanding of the work that they're doing and where that can go next, but also in helping people to understand what that strategy might mean for them. So yeah, very much digest it, reflect on it, and let's have conversations.
Okay, thank you very much. John, from a more specific standpoint for you working at Newton Abbot, as you've started recently, how does your approach to social impact and community apply to that?
So on this question, I'll probably talk about scale a little bit. So I was lucky enough to be at Aintree, where identified the people's race should be given to the people. Hence the Aintree Community Programme was born. And we were lucky there that we had partners on our doorstep, such as Liverpool, Everton in the community, the Everton Foundation, etc., to work with and help us. I was also able to assign full-time staff to deliver that programme as well. What I wanted to say was that anybody can get involved at any level in the sport and across the sport. Here in Newton Abbot, we're small independent racecourse. As I say, we are very much physically in the centre of the town. And much as You can have a really good structure, really good program, really well thought out, really well measured programs such as the Aintree one, which continues to do such fantastic work today. Here in my first year here, it's been a little bit scattergun, but I don't think that's a bad thing. So we've been involved in something like 14, 15 initiatives across the year that would range us from working with young people locally who've suffered trauma in their lives, and how can we get them on a successful path with their lives. We've obviously done Racing to School days, 5 days of those. We've worked with a local hospice, and we've done a Forces Day. We worked with Devon Air Ambulance. All of them are key in terms of driving our presence in the community. We set up our own business club, which again works in business and community, because community doesn't just mean charity. It is also about a whole community, such as also getting involved in supporting the Christmas light switch on at Newton Abbot. But I guess the thing for me is that anyone at any level can get involved in community work and promoting our sport in the community and getting people to buy into their community without it necessarily having to be some great thing that's got measurement to it. Yes, you want to make an impact, and I talked about Racing to School people and young people giving that feedback, and you can capture that at our level. But we need to rely on things such as Racing to Schools, the work that Tom's doing, to enable us to measure that properly and to measure that impact. And I think also us getting involved in the bowel cancer screening awareness programme this year, again, that was driven from something that the Yorkshire courses did incredibly well, that Racing Together and the RCA got behind, and they filtered that out down to us. So they made it very easy for us to become part of that. All we were having to give up was a little bit of time, a little bit of space, and a little bit of media and marketing around that. So I guess from my perspective, there's more that we can do. We can be more structured about it, which we will be in 2026. But when I look back on it and reflect, we have made such a difference and done so much in that local community without even realising it until you do step back. And as I say, if you're a one person band, if you've got a race course of 10 people, if you're a large race course that's got 100 people working for you, you can similarly make a similar impact within your local community. It's just a matter of scale.
I mean, you mentioned Racing to School a lot there, and I'd first like to say a massive well done for reaching 250,000 participants. What does it mean to you to be involved with the charity as a trustee?
It's an honour and a privilege, Luca. You know, it is what Racing to School has achieved to get to that 250,000 is absolutely incredible. To be a very, very small part of it. We're very lucky that we've got a very committed team that do absolutely brilliant work. You know, Lucy doing these webinars, for example, as you mentioned before, so many of them already, so many panelists involved, so much information given out, I think is incredible. But as I say, it goes back, and our chair, Michael Andrews, always says at every board meeting, we always reflect on that feedback from who we are impacting on and those young people, and to be able to hear what our sport can do and mean to those young people it really is awe-inspiring. It still gives you goosebumps when you read some of that feedback. And long may the work continue. You know, 250,000 now, how soon can it be before we reach 1 million? And with the work that Tom's doing and the industry's going to do, you know, Racing to School can really only grow and grow and grow. And isn't that fantastic to think that we've reached so many people, impacted so many young people's lives? And it is educational. You know, it's not just about getting them to come and see racing. It's about giving them education, giving them different perspectives on how they do their maths, etc., and making it more enjoyable and fun for them. And as I say, whenever people, it's just general race goers, whenever they see a Racing to School day taking place at a race course, you know, it gives a real buzz to the place. People see those young people really enjoying and engaging with what's going on around a race course. It's phenomenal. It's an absolute pleasure, honour, privilege to do it.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I think we'll ask a more broad question to the room again now. So where do we see the greatest potential for racing to strengthen its connection with the locals communities, and what might help make that happen? We'll start with you, Dan.
I guess luckily it's slightly different. I come from sort of an urban area, and I do think from a fan engagement people, we can sort of latch into local communities. I mean, I guess I'm part of the Irish community in Birmingham, and I think you can go out to them, you know, get them to come racing, get them to engage more, and that there's other You saw, I think when I was at the RCA Award, you saw how Wolverhampton did something with the Afro-Caribbean community. I think if we could go out and pinpoint, different groups, people, we can get them engaged them in racing by the sorts of things we heard from Beacon, creating the connections, demystifying the sport. So I think it's perhaps reaching new audiences that we don't currently get to now, rather than our traditional ones. That's where the opportunity is.
Tom, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with everything Dan said there. I think from a kind of more impact specific point of view, I think there's a real opportunity to really have a genuine and transformational impact in the lives of individuals and communities. John's kind of reference to some of the stuff that Newton Abbott's been starting this year, and I think that the starting point for that is really understanding what the needs of those communities are, and every single community will have some shared but very different needs. And I think that considering those needs and acknowledging that racing won't be well placed to address many of those needs, but there will be some where racing can play a role and can make a difference. And if we can, as a sport, understand those communities, be clear on the role that we can play in addressing some of the needs that they have, work in partnership with the community and those already trying to address those needs, then we can have a really genuine and tangible impact. And if we're having an impact in our communities, we're going to be an asset to our communities.
Julia?
Daniel, you mentioned about micro ownership in horses and syndicates, and you look at what happens in Australia, and so many people manage to have a very small section of a horse in Australia, and there are a lot more people who know and understand racing in Australia, and I feel if we could broaden the ownership through more syndicates, smaller syndicates, giving people ordinary people, and get rid of that sort of elitism that anybody can actually have a piece of a racehorse and connect down into the communities. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. And I think we should look abroad to, some of how our peers do it a lot better than we do, and why that is. I think in Australia, a syndicate is actually a financially regulated product. So I think there's a bit more regulation out there than there is here. And then just on another tact, perhaps something that's that we want to look into, which would boil down into the communities as well, and the welfare of horses. What happens to a horse when it leaves racing? There are thousands and thousands of horses leave racing each year, and there's an amazing charity, Retraining of Racehorses. And what we might be able to do as an insurance industry, to look after the horses that we have been insuring that then don't have a use going forward, and try and get them into the equestrian industry or back out into the equine population and down into the community. I think that would be a really good message.
Yeah, it's a great point there, Julia. I was at Wincanton the other week, and they were parading a lot of old stars, including Frodon.
Yep.
So, and I've been growing up watching him, and seeing that he's very happy after racing is great. But there probably should be more of that to be done. Finally, John.
Yeah, it's hard to add to that. I think racing is not very good at shouting about what we are doing, and Juliet's talked about the whole life cycle of a horse. We're not very good at shouting about that because we're nervous about some of those negative things that Dan talked about in his research. We need to be shouting about it. We need to find as many partners who can help us shout about and help us deliver our messages. I think we've probably touched on partnerships. Partnerships are hugely important. You can find those right partnerships, as Tom touched on, around your communities, touched on about with Aintree, Everton and Liverpool football clubs, for example. There's lots of great examples. I think another thing racing has struggled with, and it's great to hear new voices such as Dan, Tom, Juliet to talk about this, because we are quite insular, and it is the same voices, or has been the same voices. So we need those new voices, and we need to listen, and we need to act on it. So I think there's a huge opportunity. People say we're the second most watched sport in the UK, but that audience is always hovered around that 4 million-ish type level. We really want to be kicking on from there. And there's that young people gap in the market. You know, Racing to School does great work, but it's that connection, as I say, we're working with a young people's charity, 16 to 25. You know, that type of audience, we need to be supporting them and also helping them on that pathway and the pathways that Tom's talked about. But I think it's great that the industry is at least coming together with a plan. And as I said before, it's open to anyone and people can fit in at different times and different parts. But as long as now we're going to have a proper plan and a proper structure to it, I think that's absolutely great for the sport. But as I say, we have to look externally and we can't just do what we've always done. And we've got to try and do more of what we're doing in a better way, in a way that we can reflect and actually come back and say, these are the results and this is the difference that we've made over a period of time. I think it's very exciting as long as we're able to deliver on what we've talked about.
I agree a lot. I think collaboration really is key. The more voices you have in the room, the more successful long-term plans are going to end up. I'm still very conscious of time. We've got some great questions from the Q&A section, all fairly specific. First of which is aimed at Tom. Tom, can you tell us about emerging programs and work streams coming from the social impact strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd probably touch on three initially that we're moving forwards and are live now, all of which are funded by the Racing Foundation. So the first is a social value project. So that is very much about measuring our impact as a sport. We're going through that process of looking at everything that we do and considering the outcomes that are generally used in that kind of research. Mapping all that together, understanding the data we have or could gather to enable us to calculate that impact, and ultimately the output of that is a pound sign. And I think the benefit of that is kind of multiple. You know, from an individual charity's point of view, to be able to say, right, we spend £1 and generate, you know, a value of £6 will benefit their fundraising efforts. You know, from someone like a racecourse point of view, to be able to say this is the contribution we make to this community. I think it'll also help us understand where we do have the greatest impact and allow that to make us focus more, but also to celebrate the impact that we're having and really make sure that we are championing all of the broad range of work that we do in a kind of more cohesive way, because it's difficult to tell a story about all of the great things we do because there is so much and it's so varied. I think the second project I touched on is a loneliness pilot. So this is a project being led by the BHA, funded by the Racing Foundation, and Racing Together are the delivery partner of that project, using the connections and expertise they have to ultimately make it happen. 6 race courses are part of that. They've each got at least one community partner. We've been very focused on how we can work with those partners to address loneliness, and that's underpinned by an impact measurement framework to help us understand the impact that we're having and what we can learn from that. And what I would say, whilst we've got 6 months plus to deliver that and then consider the impact, anyone on this call or aware of activities in racing that are looking to address loneliness, get in touch, because that impact measurement framework is something that can be applied across anything anyone is doing. So please do reach out to myself or Lucy to kind of understand more about that. The last piece of work that's very much underway is then around signposting. So it's a very functional project, and it's looking to address the kind of very commonly raised challenge of what next, on the back of a lot of the kind of brilliant and inspirational introductions that we're able to give to our sport. And John's talked about that both from a Racing to School point of view, but also from a kind of a horse point of view and people's interaction with horses. And I think there is a real opportunity for us if we are better able to signpost young people, their parents, their teachers, in how they can engage again with our sport. And I think if we get that right, it'll add a lot of more value to those introductory experiences that we deliver so well. But it'll also increase our potential to have a positive impact on young people. So yeah, they're 3 live projects right now. And if any element of those is of interest to anyone, then please do reach out.
Thank you very much, Tom. John, I noticed your hand went up for a brief moment there.
Sorry, no, I'm conscious of time, Luke. I just wanted to also make the point that in terms of impact, you've also got to bear in mind that, and it's probably a dirty thing to say, is that, there is a benefit and there's a financial benefit back to the sport for doing this work. This isn't just around us being charitable. Yes, it's great to measure the impact out in the community. That's absolutely fantastic, and that's why we do it. But also we have to bear in mind there is a return, and we're doing this for a return, whether that's 8 million people coming racing in 10 years' time or 4 million, whatever it may be. There is still that measurement to bear in mind, that when I'm doing stuff with a business club in the community, money is coming back into my business that I can invest in the racing product. So I think it's important not to lose sight of that as well.
Okay, Juliet, there's a question here for you. Juliet, can you tell us more about other Markel community initiatives across the business as well as the Magnolia Cup?
Gosh, that's put me on the spot, hasn't it? And there are loads, because we are an incredibly charitable company, and Markel is constantly matching all of the efforts. I mean, we're massively into Movember right now, as I'm sure many of the rest of you are. But I might have to come back to you, Luca, with a list of exact things that we're doing. Markel is a massive company. I'm part of the equine and livestock team, which is a very small cog in a very large wheel. But I'd love to come back to you if that's all right.
Okay, I'm sure Lucy can provide a link later on.
Thank you. Sorry not to be able to be more.
That's more than okay. The final question is actually directed at me, which is asking to tell us more about my experience on the Racing Media Academy and what I would say to anyone considering applying. Well, it was a very, very intense week, to say the least. The application process was very, very smooth. You can actually apply now for next year's class of 26, it will be. You go for an interview in February. I was fortunate enough to go to Doncaster this year. You go to Ascot, I believe. You go through an interview process, and you get the call from either Lee, Josh, or Abby Afi to see if you've got on, really. I was fortunate enough to get that call, and it kind of all spiraled from there, really. I got to meet so many fantastic young minds who were passionate about the sport, some with absolutely no knowledge of the sport whatsoever. We had someone from Hong Kong who'd never seen a horse, heard about horse racing before, but he learned so much and he brought so much to the week. And yeah, it was just a fantastic experience, and I'd thoroughly encourage anyone to apply. I think the only thing is you have to be 18 or over. There's no other limits to who can apply apart from that. But yeah, I think that tips us over to 2:45. I'd like to thank everyone who's contributed today to the webinar, and to also encourage you to join the newsletter and follow Racing Together on all social platforms to find out about future episodes. A survey will pop up at the end of this, so please let us know any feedback from this webinar. Are there any final words that we'd like to add?
Thank you, Luca, for hosting. Great job.
Thank you.
Ditto. Well done, Luca.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh yes, there is one final thing. Racing Together is pleased to announce the date and venue for their upcoming Industry Day event. It's here at Lingfield Park Racecourse on Wednesday, the 4th of February. More details, including early bird and under 25 tickets, will follow soon. Please keep an eye on the email newsletter and socials for any more details. Thank you very much all for joining, and we'll see you for the next episode.
Thank you very much.
Many thanks. Well done.